China's the kind of country where you can be kind of weird and nobody notices.
Yeah. Okay. It's us.
But basically, the thing I've realized is that compatibility and practicality matter a lot to women. So if a woman, like, you might be like a very interesting, funny guy, but if a woman can't imagine herself living a life with you or having any kind of relationship with you, it doesn't matter. So that's why, learning language can really help you, because it allows you to say, hey, I learned Chinese. I can meet your family. I can meet your friends. I can hang out with you in Chinese places. It's even better if the girl speaks English sometimes, because if the girl speaks English, then you can take her to places where people speak English and they do English speaking things. So you can take her into your world and not just like, stay in her world, her Chinese world. So, the more flexibility you have, the more practicality, like you can say, hey, our relationship makes sense. It makes sense for us to be together. I think that will, that will help you a lot, because practicality matters a lot to women. But for men, we don't care. Like, okay, beautiful woman, I don't care if she speaks English or not. I'll get her pregnant. But for women, it's not like that. They don't want that really.
Yo, it's true, man. I feel like with men, like the girl could be working in a warehouse and Burger King, McDonald's, whatever the case is. As long as she bad and she got a badonkadonk, yeah, we'll date her, whatever the case is. But with women, they have more standards. They have a bigger checklist, and I'm sure Chinese women are the same way. But do a lot of Chinese women know English, or is it like a minority?
Actually, a lot of girls do speak English, man. A lot of girls speak English. Younger women. If she's under the age of 30, she probably speaks decent English, maybe enough. Like, it's very rare you meet a woman who doesn't speak any English. Like, maybe she just didn't really learn it in school very well. But yeah, yeah, man. But it depends on the city. I definitely recommend learning Chinese. It'll just open more doors for you. It'll give you more options with women.
I feel like Mandarin has to be one of the hardest languages to learn, man. Like, what was the learning curve like when you were learning that originally?
I like learning languages. I like studying languages, so I never felt like it was too difficult. I felt like it was kind of annoying when I would say things and people can't understand me. But yeah, basically, mainly it's the tones, because the word changes depending on the tone you use. So if you don't say it like kind of fluently, it can be hard to understand you. And even for me, I learned Chinese. I studied it for over 6 years, and even for me, like, if I don't speak Chinese for a long time and I try to speak it, basically, it could come out kind of it could come out kind of not fluent. It could come out like kind of messy, and like people won't understand what I say. So that's kind of annoying sometimes. But it took me 3 years of regular study to kind of reach fluency to the level where I could go on dates with girls without needing to pull out my translator,
Man, I've been telling people about that, man. Like, because I made a video about Brazil, because only 1% of the population of Brazil speaks English. And I was telling people, man, it's I know people may perceive that Brazil's easy, and it can be if you know the language. However, you don't know the language, it's hit or miss, man, because these girls don't want to be dealing with guys that are going to be pulling out the translator the entire time. That's annoying for you as the American and for her as the foreigner. You know what I mean? So I always tell guys, make sure to learn the basic key words, or at least learn a little bit of the language before you go to that country. But in terms of China, like, when you nowadays, that is, do you speak to them in Mandarin, or do you speak to them in English when you're on your dates, or does it depend?
It depends, man. Like, sometimes I approach a girl and I just randomly find out she's pretty fluent in English. But usually a girl won't be that fluent unless she's like dated a foreigner before. So a girl who's dated a foreigner before, she might be more fluent in English. Yeah, but it's like a mix, man. Like, honestly, it's a mix. but the English level is pretty good in my city.
Wow.
So you can meet a large amount of girls who like just speak pretty fluent English.
That's cool, man. I'm sure that's the education system, the schools out there that teach them from a young age, and then of course, guys like yourself who go out there and teach. So that's definitely a good thing, man. So basically, my friend, so how does it go with the foreigners over there? Because in certain cities like Medellin, for example, Sosua, Dominican Republic, these are other places that a lot of passport bros go to. It's kind of flooded with Americans, flooded with passport bros. I'm assuming this isn't the case with China, right?
Yeah, it's not the case over here in Asia at all, really, except in certain areas. Now, there are areas where it might be flooded with foreigners, but flooded with Americans is pretty rare over here in the places I've been to in Asia. Like, yeah, you can meet Americans, but it's like a large concentration of Americans over here. It's less common compared to probably South America, man. But yeah, I guess that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what your goals are.
Yeah, definitely, man. So what are the type of foreigners that you see the most out in China, out of curiosity?
Honestly, man, China's kind of an interesting country. It's kind of like, I feel like the people who come over here were more weird. It's like, because China's the kind of country where you can be kind of weird and nobody notices.
Kind of
Like, you
like
could be like a
Japan?
really Japan, you could be weird and nobody will say anything. Like, Japanese people probably won't say anything about it. But it's like with China, it's like you can be kind of weird and like people just kind of accept it because Chinese people themselves, they also have their own little weird quirks. So like you can be kind of, there's less social pressure over here in China. Like, people think China's a strict country, but no, like Japan is like way more strict than China. Definitely. Like, Japan has so many like social rules that you got to follow, or not just gotta follow, but it's just like, oh, as soon as you do something, it's considered to be rude. You got to be careful. You don't want to offend anybody. So yeah, it's just more pressure over there. But China is like, I'm kind of a weird dude. I'm walking around filming stuff, cold approaching women, but no one cares really. It's like no one really. People look at me, but like no one really does anything. It's just like entertaining for them. So yeah, man. Yeah, that's my opinion about that.
So what's considered improper, rude in China? What would get you in trouble in China?
Really hard to say, man. Honestly, I think it's probably similar to a lot of Asian countries. Maybe just like, I don't know, man. I feel like in China, man, there's like, I see so many different types of behavior that's like kind of inappropriate, but people do it anyway. Like, people spit, people smoke in buildings. Like, people basically. Here's the thing, man. A lot of the surrounding countries, they kind of hate the Chinese because the Chinese, like, they don't really follow rules. Like, they kind of
Like
like.
America.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, people say Americans are rude too, but it's like, yeah, like for Chinese people, it's like, I don't know, like people call it uncivilized, but for me, I never really noticed. I don't care. Like, people want to like do stuff, break rules, it's whatever. Basically, Chinese people, a lot of them only follow rules when it's convenient. Okay. So that's one thing about China. Like, they only follow rules when it's convenient. In Japan, it seems like they'll follow the rule even if it's not convenient. But for Chinese people, it's like, yeah, they will break rules all the time.
That leads me to my next question, man. Because I saw one of your Instagram videos where you were talking about the safety in China, and you were comparing it to Medellin, Colombia, where you said that in Medellin, Colombia, there's certain places you can't be there at night, and meanwhile in China, you can be in places day, night. It don't matter what time of the day it is. How's the safety in China? Because that's something that's a big question mark to a lot of Americans.
Yeah, basically, I can't think of any places in China where I can't go during day or nighttime. It's basically, I can go wherever I want. Yeah, man. But to be fair, like, I haven't been to Colombia, but basically a lot of people I associate with, they've been in Colombia. And when I made that video, I made it saying like, hey, it seems that in Colombia, there's some places you can't go to, and there's some people you can't really interact with out of safety. But in China, it's not like that, man. It's like I go out. What, last night I was up pretty late. I can go out, walk the streets, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. In Asia, you can do that. I've heard you can't really do that in many parts of South America.